Good afternoon, boys and girls. It's Miss Escamilla. I'm going to go ahead and make the third video today, Wednesday, going over the last four problems on your homework, questions 9, 10, 11, and 12. When I look at question 9, the standard is 4.4b, which tells me that it requires you to be able to determine products of a number and 10 or products of a number and 100, which means multiplying a number by 10 or 100 or 1,000 and using our knowledge about place value to multiply those types of numbers. So, for example, we learned in class that if you have a number such as like 36 and we want to multiply it by 10, then we know that we can take the number 36 and multiply it by 1 and get the number 36 and simply add a 0 to make a product of 360. We also know that if we were to take 36 and multiply it by 100, that 36 times 1 is 36. But because we're multiplying by 100, we would add 2 zeros to the end of our product. Okay, that's the skill that we're working on. If we were to multiply 36 times 1,000, then we would take 36, multiply it by 1, and add 3 zeros to get our product. Okay, so that's the strategy that we worked on. So when you're working on number 9, think about that. Okay, on number 10, it looks like on number 10, you have to determine what factor would you put in this hexagon that would result in this product. So you're going to have to try each one of these answer choices. You're going to have to put each one of these answer choices inside of that hexagon and then multiply it by 7,224 to determine if you get 50,568 as your answer. So you're going to have to multiply 7,224. First, you're going to need to multiply it by 6 and see what you get. Then you're going to have to take it, the same number, 7,224, and multiply it by 8 and see what you get. And then you're going to have to do the same thing and multiply it by 9 and see what you get. And you're going to have to keep doing this until you find, so you're going to have to multiply 7,224 by 6, by 7, by 6, by 8, by 9, and by 7, and see which one of those answers gives you 50,568. Now, when you multiply, so for example, when you multiply 7,224, let's say that you're going to multiply it by the 6 first. You have to choose which multiplication strategy you want to use. Are you going to do a model? Where, are you going to use your area model where you break it apart and then you multiply and you fill in your partial products and add it up? Or are you going to do the standard algorithm? Are you going to multiply it going up with regrouping? So you have to choose how you want to multiply to determine which one of the answers would go in that, which one of the numbers would go in that hexagon. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work there. On number 11, again, when I look at number 11, it's 4.4d. That goes right along with what we did on number 9, where we're multiplying by tens. So for example, if I were to give you a problem such as 20, let's say 15 times 20, okay, you can use multiplication and your knowledge about place value to be able to multiply a number like this. So in class, we learned that on a problem like this, we could take 15 and multiply it by 2. I know that in my head, but I could also do 15 times 2 like this. 2 times 5 is 10. Put my 0 there, carry my 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, is 30. So I know that 15 times 2 is 30. And that we can add 1 0 because of the 0 and 20 to our product to get 300. Okay. If I were to give you a problem such as 65 times 40. Well, rather than multiplying 65 times 40, I could multiply 16 by 4 and then add a 0 to the product. So if I were to do 65 times 4, 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 6 is 24, plus 2 is 26. Well, 65 times 4 is 260. And then I would just simply add my 0 from 40, and I have a product of 2,600. Okay, it's knowing how to multiply by multiples of 10. So 40 is a multiple of 10. Anytime we're multiplying by a multiple of 10, you could take your first factor and multiply it by the first digit in that second factor. Okay, so think about that as you're doing number 11. Also on number 11, I had a student ask me, this is called a griddable. So you're going to solve the problem and get your answer and record it in this griddable. Notice there's a decimal point here. If that's a decimal point, then that tells me that this is the tenths place and that this is the hundredths place, which means this is the ones place, this is the tens place, and this is the hundreds place. Okay? So when you get your answer, you need to make sure that you record your answer in the correct place value position. So for example, let's say that you did the work, and let's just pretend that your answer was 13. Let's say that was your answer. Well, 13 is a whole number. That's not a decimal. So that means because that's a whole number and not a decimal, you would have nothing in the tenths place. So I would put a 0 there, and nothing in the hundredths place. So I would put a 0 there. The 3 is the ones place. So I would put that in the ones place. And the 1 is in the tens place. So I would put that in the tens place. There are no hundreds in the number 13. So I would put a 0 in the hundreds place. And then you would bubble accordingly. If I put a 0 in that box, I would bubble a 0. If I put a 1 in that box, I bubble a 1. If I put a 3 in this box, I bubble a 3. If I put a 0 there, I bubble a 0. If I put a 0 there, I bubble a 0. Okay? So let's say that your answer happened to be, let's say that you happen to get an answer of 12 and 45 hundredths. Well, that is a decimal. You have a 4 in the tenths place, so you would put a 4 in the tenths place. A 5 in the hundredths place, so you would put a 5 in the hundredths place. 2 in the ones place, so you would put your 2 in the ones place, and a 1 in the tens place, so you would put your 1 in the tens place. So you got to fill in this according to the correct place value position. Okay, and then finally the last one is a number line. Now I notice on our number line that at the big, there's between here we have some big marks, and we also have some small marks. So I'm going to kind of just go over those big marks, and we're going to take a look and see how many sections we have in this number line. So when I look at this number line, I notice there's 1 section, 2 sections, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 equal parts or 10 sections. So when you have 10 sections, if you've taken something and divided it into 10 equal parts, that means you have divided it into tenths. Tenths. So when we're thinking about tenths as a fraction, a tenth would look like this as a fraction, and as a decimal, a tenth would look like this. Now I notice that if I count all the little bitty lines, and I counted all of them, there would be 1, 2, or section. It's also been divided into a bunch of little bitty parts. If I were to count every one of those little bitty sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I know that there's 100 of equal parts. So the smaller lines are divided into hundredths, which would look like a hundredth as a fraction, or 0.01 as a decimal. So think about that when you're trying to think about what decimal would be there. If that's a 0 and that's a 1, then this would, and it's divided into 10 equal parts, use that information to decide how you want to label your number line. All right, good luck.